Now that we have defined our crop, we're ready to work on color and tone. And we're going to do that using color balance and curves. Well, let's start off by working on the sky. First, we'll click on our color balance icon. What I'm going to do is just bring in some nice colors here, maybe some reds, and perhaps a little bit of blue there. Again, just bringing in some of these tones. Next, we'll invert the mask by pressing Command or Control I. Here we'll grab our brush tool. We want to paint with white. Relatively high opacity there, but a bit smaller of a brush. And all that we're going to do is just start to paint across a few areas of our photograph. I'm going to make my opacity even lower so I can paint this in a little bit more subtly. I realized that opacity was a touch too high, a bit overdone. And just going to bring in some of this nice color and tone into the photograph. Great. Here we're just illuminating some of these clouds and really adding a bit of visual interest to the sky. Take a look. There's the before and after. Next up, let's go ahead and click on color balance again. So we'll go to our adjustment layer and choose color balance. Here we're going to work on those blues. We'll increase the blues, maybe a little bit of cyan there in the sky. Just try to get that sky color to look good. Invert that, Command I. And once again with our brush, we're just going to paint over some of the blue colors. And in this way we can kind of target each color and we can work on these different areas of the photograph, trying to build up the visual drama a bit, add a little more to the sky. All right, so far so good. I think that's kind of fun. Here's our overall before and then after. Zoom in a touch so you can actually see the color change before and after. What I want to do next is I want to add some contrast, which in turn will also add color saturation. So here we'll click on our adjustment layer icon. We'll choose curves. And I'm going to darken my curve point here, then also brighten this one. Traditional little S curve, all it does is contrast and color saturation, but it kind of illuminates things nicely. Once again, invert the mask, grab our brush tool, and we'll go ahead and just paint with this over a few areas of the sky. Again, just adding a touch of visual snap here, trying to build this up a little bit. And one of the reasons why it's nice to work with masking is we can just control different areas of the sky, slowly making the sky come to life by using these different adjustment layers. Now, if you're interested in moving a little bit more quickly, sometimes what you can do is click on one of your layers and change the blending mode to soft light. And when you do that here with this layer, we can see that what it does is it really just illuminates that area nicely. Now, in that case, it makes the brush strokes too strong. So there we would need to go to our mask panel and then increase the feather amount to diffuse that. So it's a little bit more of a subtle adjustment as far as the brush strokes, but it can help build up something rather quickly. In my case, I'm going to go back to normal. I like the little bit more of that subtle look there with those colors. All right, there's our sky, our overall before and after. One more color balance layer. We'll go ahead and click on that here and just bring out some of the reds perhaps. And I'm going to try to do this in my highlights actually. Bring out some of the reds there in the highlights and the shadows, perhaps a little bit of the blues. And once again, Command or Control I, invert the mask. And then with a big brush and a relatively high opacity, we can go ahead and paint this in. I'm just going to paint this in broad brush strokes here across this area. And one of the things I find is important when you're working with color, especially with landscapes, is that you work at it little by little. It's almost a painterly approach. Rather than going over the top and just taking things too far initially, we slowly progress so we come up with a pretty interesting looking sky. All right, last thing I want to do here on the sky, one more curves adjustment. This time I'm going to brighten this up, going to add a little bit of red in there, and then invert this mask, Command or Control I, grab my brush, and make my brush nice and small now. And with a smaller brush, I'm just going to paint over some of these highlight areas. And currently my opacity is a bit too high, but I'm going to leave it there so you can see what I'm doing, trying to add some dimension to this area of the photograph. And what these little brush strokes can do for us is that if we paint with black or white, in this case painting with black to clean up some of these edges, we can start to bring out some of these natural highlights of the clouds there. And I'm painting with black just to kind of clean up some of my brush strokes. There's a bit too harsh, especially this high, but you can start to see how we have these really interesting looking little highlights there in the clouds. To make those a bit more diffuse, go into the mask panel and then increase the feather there on the brush strokes. That will soften up that brightness area. Here's the before and after, just bringing out some of those highlights. And again, It's just a nice little touch to add more dimension to the clouds. And I'll modify the feather just to get it looking just right. All right, there's our sky, our overall before and then after. Let's continue to work on some other areas of this photograph, and we'll do that in the next movie.